If you're like me, you think judo is one of the most fun Olympic events to watch, but the one complaint I have about the Olympic coverage is that they don't do a great job explaining the sport to people who aren't familiar with it, which is probably why you clicked on this video. Whether you're a jiu-jitsu person like me who wants to watch the closest thing to BJJ in the Olympics, or you're a normal person who wants to understand the crazy cool sport they're watching, let me lay it out for you. Judo is a Japanese martial art that was first contested in the Olympics in 1964. Just a heads up, I don't speak Japanese. There will be some Japanese pronunciations along the way. I'm doing my best. Sorry for all the bad ones. Also, judo itself is pretty complex. I'm also doing my best to make it as easy to understand as possible. The goal in judo is to throw and or submit your opponent, but we'll get to the actual competition in a minute. But first, a few terms you need to know. The gi is the traditional uniform worn during competition, and it's made of a durable material that won't rip when it's being grabbed and pulled. Tatami is the word for mat, so you might hear the word tatami being used by commentators when they're discussing where the competition is happening and where the competitors are fighting. Waza means technique, and it's going to pop up a lot. NAGE-WAZA means throwing technique, like some of these. Watch this and tell me judo isn't exciting. OSAEKOMI-WAZA, one of those pronunciations I probably butchered. Those are techniques by which one competitor can hold their opponent on the mat for 20 consecutive seconds. There are also SHIME-WAZA, which are strangling techniques. If you're familiar with jiu-jitsu, you'll be familiar with some of these chokes, and this is where a lot of the crossover happens between BJJ and judo. You also see a lot of crossover between the two sports when looking at KANSETSU-WAZA, or joint locks. The collective term for all of these ground techniques is NEWAZA, and the judo NEWAZA and the ground game in jiu-jitsu are cousins, maybe siblings, definitely more than friends. So I saved the hardest for last in terms of vocabulary, not in pronunciation, but in terms of complexity. Remember when I said judo is complicated? Well, along comes the word IPPON. IPPON is the highest score possible at 1 point, and a referee signaling IPPON indicates that a match has been won instantly without the requirement of further points and before the time limit of the match has been reached. You can think of this like a knockout in MMA or a submission in MMA or jiu-jitsu, basically putting your opponent into a position where they are forced to submit and concede defeat or are thrown in a way that results in an immediate win. An IPPON will be signaled for a throw where one competitor throws their opponent in a way that the opponent lands on their back. However, you can throw your opponent on their back and it not be scored as an IPPON. To achieve an IPPON via throw, the throw must include landing the opponent on their back with force, with speed, and control. If any of those four things don't happen during the throw, the referee can raise his arm parallel to the mat and signal a WAZA-ARI, a half point. 2 WAZA-ARI equal 1 IPPON. So if someone scores a second WAZA-ARI during a match, the ref will signal WAZA-ARI again, but he'll keep raising his arm to signal the IPPON. An IPPON is also scored if an OSAEKOMI-WAZA technique is applied where one competitor holds the other competitor in position on the mat for 20 seconds. Are you with me so far? It's not too bad, right? Well, tie your gis up tight because it gets a little weirder. If you compete in jiu-jitsu, you know what an advantage is. You can think of a YUKO as the judo equivalent of an advantage in jiu-jitsu. For those of you who aren't familiar with an advantage, it's like a point that doesn't count unless it has to count. In judo, a YUKO is awarded when the referee deems a technique to be effective, but not effective enough to score a WAZA-ARI. But it's not really a point. WAZA-ARI outrank YUKO regardless of how many YUKO are scored. One competitor could have 1,000 YUKO and the other competitor has 1 WAZA-ARI, and the 1 WAZA-ARI would be the winner. The YUKO comes into play if no WAZA-ARI or IPPON were scored, or if the competitors have the same number of WAZA-ARI. In that case, the competitor with the most YUKO is declared the winner. If there are no winners at the end of regulation time, 5 minutes for men and 4 for women, Then we go to a golden point overtime, which is basically the first person to score wins. I know, it's annoyingly complex and it gets even more complicated, but we're not going there. We're just gonna focus broad strokes for the purpose of this video. In simplest terms, 1 IPPON wins immediately. 2 WAZA-ARI makes 1 IPPON and wins the match. 1,000,000 YUKOs still lose to a single WAZA-ARI, but if there is a tie in WAZA-ARI, the YUKO breaks the tie. As a viewer, the IPPON is the most exciting thing to see. A huge throw or a cool submission is so much fun to watch. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, and judo is so parallel to my sport that's a lot of fun to see in the Olympics. And even if you're not into combat sports or martial arts usually, there's a lot to enjoy about judo. I hope you found that video helpful and it makes your Olympic viewing more enjoyable. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you liked it, why not share it with a friend? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.